The incident at Nexus Station Marcus Chun guided his cargo vessel through the docking bay of Nexus Station with practiced ease. The station hung in the void between star systems, a massive structure built from salvaged metal and alien technology. It served as a neutral trading post where dozens of species came to exchange goods and information. Marcus had been making runs to Nexus Station for 5 years, ever since leaving the Earth Defense Corps to become an independent trader. His ship, the Persistence, was small but reliable. The cargo hold was filled with rare earth minerals from the mining colonies, and Marcus hoped to trade them for medical supplies that the outer settlements desperately needed. He was not traveling alone. Sarah Vale, a xenobiologist from the University of Mars, had paid for passage to study the various alien species that frequented the station. Tommy Rodriguez, barely 20 years old, served as the ship's mechanic. The young man had a gift for understanding alien technology, and his cheerful personality made him popular with everyone they met as they docked. Marcus noticed unusual activity around the station. Several military-grade ships were parked in the outer rings, their dark hulls bristling with weapons. The ships belonged to the Catherian Empire, aggressive reptilian species known for their conquest of smaller worlds. Marcus felt a familiar tension in his shoulders, the same feeling he used to get before combat missions in the Defense Corps. Sarah emerged from her research lab, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She carried a tablet displaying her latest notes about interspecies communication. The Catherians seemed agitated, she observed, looking through the viewport at the alien vessels. Their bio readings are showing elevated stress hormones. Tommy appeared from the engine room, his hands stained with lubricant and a wide grin on his face. The new plasma converters are working perfectly, he announced. We should be able to make the return trip in record time. The young mechanic had no idea that his enthusiasm would soon trigger a chain of events that would reshape galactic politics. The 3 humans made their way through the station's crowded corridors. Nexus Station was a maze of different architectural styles, each section built to accommodate different species. The human quarter was modest but comfortable, with gravity and atmosphere settings that matched Earth normal. Alien traders moved through the passages, their various forms creating a constant symphony of different languages and customs. Marcus completed his trade negotiations quickly, exchanging his minerals for medical supplies and basic equipment. Sarah spent her time in the xenobiology section, collecting samples and interviewing alien researchers. Tommy explored the engineering sections, fascinated by the various technologies on display. Everything seemed normal until the alarms began blaring. Red lights flashed throughout the station as emergency broadcasts echoed through the corridors. The automated systems switched to multiple languages, warning all inhabitants to remain in their quarters. Marcus recognized the situation immediately from his military training. The station was under attack. Through the viewport, he could see Catherian fighters swarming around the station like angry insects. Their leader, a massive warrior named Vextar, had decided that Nexus Station would make a perfect addition to his empire. The Catherians were known for their belief at might made right, and they had little respect for the neutral status of trading posts. Vextar himself led the boarding party that breached the station's defenses. He stood over 7 feet tall, his scaled hide covered in battle scars. His yellow eyes burned with predatory intelligence, and his clawed hands carried weapons that could cut through steel. Behind him came 20 elite Catherian warriors, each one trained from birth for combat. The station's security forces tried to resist, but they were no match for the disciplined Catherian assault. Within an hour, Vextar controlled the central hub of Nexus Station. He gathered the various alien traders and staff in the main plaza, separating them by species. The Catherians had specific plans for each group, and humans were considered particularly valuable as slaves. Marcus, Sarah, and Tommy or herded together with the other humans on the station. There were maybe 30 of them in total, mostly traders and researchers with no military training. Vexstar studied them with obvious disappointment. Humans were soft creatures without natural weapons or armor. They seemed weak and pathetic compared to the mighty Cytherian warriors. "Your species amuses me," Vexstar announced in heavily accented Standard. "You spread across the galaxy like a plague, yet you have no strength to defend yourselves. Today, you will learn what happens to the weak." Marcus stepped forward, his hands raised in a peaceful gesture. "We're protected under Galactic Council law. Attacking neutral civilians is forbidden." Vexstar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "The Galactic Council is far from here, human, and laws are only as strong as those who enforce them." He gestured to his warriors, who began separating the humans into smaller groups. "You will work in our mines until you die. Your soft bodies are perfect for crawling through narrow tunnels." Sarah tried to maintain her diplomatic composure, but Marcus could see the fear in her eyes. Tommy, however, seemed more curious than afraid. The young mechanic was studying the Cytherian weapons and armor with professional interest. He had always been fascinated by alien technology, even in dangerous situations. The situation deteriorated quickly when one of the Cytherian warriors grew impatient with Tommy's questions. The alien struck the young man across the face with the butt of his weapon, sending Tommy sprawling across the metal floor. Blood poured from his nose, and he struggled to remain conscious. Something changed in the plaza at that moment. The air seemed to grow heavier, and the temperature dropped noticeably. The human captives looked at their injured friend, and their faces became very still. Marcus felt a familiar fire beginning to burn in his chest, the same feeling he had experienced during his most dangerous military missions. Sarah knelt beside Tommy, her hands gentle as she checked his injuries. But her dark eyes were fixed on the Cytherian who had struck him, and her expression was no longer diplomatic. The xenobiologist, who had spent years studying alien behavior, was now studying her enemies for weakness. Marcus looked around at his fellow humans and saw the same transformation happening to all of them. Their heart rates had increased, but not in panic. Their breathing had become steady and controlled. Most importantly, they were all looking at him with the same expression, waiting for his signal. What the Cytherians did not know was that every human ship and facility carried a quantum beacon that automatically activated during emergencies. The beacon had been transmitting detailed biological data about the humans for the past hour, sending the information to monitoring stations across the galaxy. The data showed stress hormones, neural activity, and other readings that would have alarmed any expert in human behavior. Vexstar noticed the change in the humans and felt the first stirring of unease. His yellow eyes darted between the captives, trying to understand what was happening. "Why do they look different?" he demanded of his subordinates. One of the Cytherian warriors, a veteran of many battles, stepped closer to his commander. "Sir, something is wrong. They no longer smell of fear." Marcus stood up slowly, his blue eyes locked on Vexstar. When he spoke, his voice was completely calm. "You made a mistake. You hurt one of us." The Cytherian commander raised his clawed hand, preparing to strike the human. But Marcus was no longer standing in the same place. He had moved 3 feet to the left without making a sound, his body balanced and ready for action. The former Defense Corps soldier had awakened something that had been sleeping inside him. Sarah rose from beside Tommy, her movements fluid and precise. The xenobiologist who had spent years studying alien anatomy now knew exactly where to strike, to disable an opponent. Her hands were steady, and her eyes calculated distances and angles with frightening accuracy. Tommy pushed himself up from the floor, wiping blood from his nose. The young mechanic, who had been fascinated by alien technology, was now studying the Cytherian weapons and armor for vulnerabilities. His cheerful personality had been replaced by cold focus. The other humans began to move, spreading out through the plaza with perfect coordination. They worked together like parts of a single machine, each person knowing instinctively what the others would do. The transformation was something that happened to humans when they truly believed their pack was in danger. Vextar swung his clawed hand toward Marcus, but the human captain was already moving. He ducked under the alien's reach and rolled behind a support column. The Cytherian warriors tried to follow him with their weapons, but Marcus was always one step ahead of where they were aiming. Sarah moved toward the warrior who had hurt Tommy, her medical knowledge guiding her to pressure points that would disable without causing permanent damage. She avoided his claws and struck precisely at nerve clusters that made his weapon hand go numb. The alien stumbled backward, confused by the human's sudden competence. Tommy had somehow acquired a tool from his belt and was using it to disable the power cells in the Cytherian weapons. His understanding of alien technology allowed him to find the critical components that would render the weapons useless. The young mechanic moved between the warriors like a ghost, his work invisible until their guns began failing. The other humans joined the coordinated assault, each person contributing their unique skills to the group effort. Teachers used their knowledge of psychology to predict alien behavior. Traders used their understanding of different species to exploit weaknesses. Even the elderly humans contributed, providing tactical advice and coordination. Within 20 minutes, all 20 Cytherian warriors were unconscious or disabled. The humans had used precise strikes and pressure points that neutralized their opponents without causing serious injury. They stood among their defeated enemies, breathing hard but uninjured. Vextar stared up at the humans with terror in his yellow eyes. "What are you?" he whispered. Marcus looked down at the defeated alien commander. "We're just people trying to make a living. But when you threaten our family, we become something else." An elderly alien emerged from the crowd of traders that had been watching the battle. She was an Etherian, one of the most ancient and respected species in the galaxy. Her name was Zareth, and she had been observing the humans with great interest. "Commander Vextar," she said in a voice like wind chimes, "you have just experienced why the Galactic Council protects humans under special law. You have seen what happens when humans believe their pack is in danger." The Cytherian commander struggled to his feet, his confidence shattered. "This is impossible. They are weak creatures, with no natural weapons." Zareth's ancient eyes gleamed with knowledge, accumulated over centuries. "They are the only species in the galaxy that becomes more dangerous when protecting others. Most creatures fight hardest when defending themselves. Humans transform when defending their family." Marcus felt the fire in his chest beginning to fade, replaced by concern for the unconscious Cytherians. "Sarah, check them. Make sure they're all breathing." The xenobiologist moved through the plaza, her hands gentle as she examined each fallen warrior. The same hands that had struck with deadly precision were now providing medical care. "They're all alive," she reported. "Minor injuries, but nothing serious." Zareth nodded approvingly. Even in their protective state, humans instinctively avoid causing unnecessary harm. This is why the Galactic Council granted them special protection status. They are dangerous enough to defend themselves, but peaceful enough to be trusted. Tommy sat up, his nose still bleeding, but his eyes bright with curiosity. "What special protection status?" The ancient Etherian smiled, an expression that conveyed both wisdom and sadness. "That is a story for another time, young human. But know this: what happened here today will be studied across the galaxy. The quantum beacon in your ship has been broadcasting everything to the Council monitoring stations." As if summoned by her words, ships began appearing around Nexus Station. They materialized from hyperspace jumps and warp tunnels, vessels from dozens of different species. The beacon signal had alerted every major power in the galaxy, and they were all coming to investigate. Marcus looked around at his fellow humans, seeing them return to their normal selves. The transformation was fading, but the memory of what they had accomplished together would remain. They had faced a superior force and won through cooperation and determination. "What happens now?" Sarah asked, still kneeling beside the recovering Cytherians. Zareth gazed out at the growing fleet of ships surrounding the station. "Now the galaxy remembers why humans are protected, and why that protection must never be withdrawn." Asterisk the summit of truth, the Grand Assembly Hall on Galactic Council. Headquarters had never hosted such an emergency session. Representatives from over 50 species filled the massive chamber, their various forms creating a symphony of different languages and customs. The circular hall was designed to accommodate every known form of alien life, with specialized environmental controls for each section. Council. Prime Dexara called the session to order with a gesture of her 4 arms. The tall, blue-skinned leader of the Galactic Council had witnessed many crises during her centuries of service. But the incident at Nexus Station was unprecedented. The quantum beacon data from the human ship had been analyzed by the finest scientists in the galaxy, and the results were disturbing. "We are gathered here to address the events at Nexus Station," Dexara announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall. "The Cytherian Empire has violated the Terran Protection Accords, and we must decide how to respond." General Korth of the Draconian Empire rose from his seat, his massive reptilian form imposing even among the diverse assembly. His scales were dark green with silver markings that indicated his high rank. "With respect, Council Prime, the Cytherians were within their rights to claim the station. Humans have no special claim to protection beyond what any species enjoys." A murmur ran through the assembly as various species voiced their agreement or disagreement. The Draconian Empire had always resented the special status granted to humans, viewing them as weak creatures who received undeserved protection. Ambassador Lyra of the Sylvani Federation stood gracefully, her plant-like form swaying in the artificial breeze of her environmental section. The Sylvani were known for their peaceful nature and diplomatic skills. "General Korth, the Terran Protection Accords exist for good reason. Perhaps it is time to remind the Assembly why they were created." Dexara nodded approvingly. "Dr. Vilinix, please present your findings." An elderly scientist emerged from the research section, his gray form bent with age, but his eyes sharp with intelligence. Dr. Vilinix belonged to the Zephyrian species, renowned throughout the galaxy for their analytical abilities. He had been part of the original team that studied humans after first contact. "Honored delegates," Dr. Vilinix began, his voice carrying the authority of decades of research. 200 years ago, when humans first ventured beyond their solar system, we made a grave error in judgment. We believed them to be weak and harmless, suitable only for basic labor or simple trade. The assembly fell silent as holographic displays activated throughout the hall, showing images of early human space exploration. The primitive ships looked fragile compared to the advanced vessels of established galactic powers. The Krellin Scientific Collective decided to study these new creatures. Dr. Velinex continued. They captured a human exploration vessel containing 12 crew members. The Krellins intended to conduct biological research to understand human capabilities and limitations. General Korth interrupted with a dismissive gesture. "Ancient history, Doctor. What does this have to do with current events?" Dr. Velinox's eyes flashed with something that might have been remembered trauma. "Everything general. The Krellins made the same mistake that Commander Vextar made at Nexus Station. They underestimated what humans become when their pack is threatened." The holographic displays changed, showing medical data and brain scans from the captured humans. The readings were normal at first, showing typical stress responses expected from any species under threat. But then something changed. For 3 days, the humans endured the Krellin experiments without significant resistance, Dr. Valinex explained. They were separated into individual cells and subjected to various physical and psychological tests. The Krellins documented everything, believing they were studying a simple, primitive species. Ambassador Lyra leaned forward, her leaves rustling with concern. What happened on the 4th day? The Krellins made a critical error, Dr. Valinex replied. They injured one of the humans severely enough that the others could hear his distress calls. That triggered something in human biology that we are still trying to understand. The holographic displays showed brain scans from the remaining 11 humans. The neural activity had changed dramatically, with new patterns emerging that the Krellins had never seen before. Heart rates increased, but remained steady. Stress hormones were replaced by different chemicals that enhanced focus and coordination. Asterisk. The humans escaped simultaneously, Dr. Valinex continued. They moved through the Krellin research facility like a single organism, disabling security systems and avoiding weapons with impossible precision. They reached their injured companion, and then fought their way to the facility's command center. General Korth's skepticism was evident in his voice. 12 humans against how many Krellins? 347, Dr. Valinex answered quietly. Elite scientists and security personnel, all with advanced training and equipment. The humans neutralized every single one without causing a single death. The assembly erupted in shocked whispers. The Krellins were known as formidable opponents, with natural armor and advanced technology. The idea that 12 humans could defeat such a force seemed impossible. How? Demanded a representative from the Crystalline Confederation. Dr. Valinex activated more holographic displays showing surveillance footage from the Krellin facility. The images were grainy and old, but they clearly showed humans moving within human coordination. They seemed to know exactly where each other was at all times, working together like parts of a machine. Human pact bonding behavior activates during extreme stress, Dr. Valinex explained. When humans believe their family is in mortal danger, their brains release chemicals that enhance cooperation and suppress individual self-preservation instincts. They become more dangerous, not less, when protecting others. The footage showed humans using improvised weapons and pressure point strikes to disable their captors. They moved with purpose and precision, each person contributing their unique skills to the group effort. Scientists used their knowledge to hack security systems. Military personnel provided tactical coordination. Even civilian crew members found ways to contribute. The transformation is temporary, Dr. Valinex continued. Once the immediate threat passes, humans return to their normal cooperative state. But during the activation period, they exhibit capabilities that no other species possesses. Council. Prime Dexara studied the data with growing understanding. This is why the Terran Protection Accords were created. Not to protect humans from us, but to protect us from accidentally triggering this response. Exactly, Dr. Valinex confirmed. When the rescue ships arrived at the Krellin facility, they found the entire staff unconscious, and the humans providing medical care to their former captors. The transformation had ended, but the implications were clear. General Korth was still skeptical. Even if this is true, it was 200 years ago. How do we know humans still possess these abilities? As if in answer to his question, the main display activated, showing live footage from Nexus Station. The quantum beacon data was being broadcast in real time, showing the biological readings from Marcus, Sarah, Tommy, and the other humans during their confrontation with the Cytherians. The neural patterns are identical to those recorded during the Krellin incident, Dr. Valinex announced. 32 humans defeated 20 elite Cytherian warriors using the same pact bonding response that their ancestors demonstrated 2 centuries ago. The assembly watched in fascination as the data showed the human transformation. Brain activity synchronized between individuals. Heart rates stabilized into perfect rhythm. Chemical releases enhanced focus and coordination while suppressing fear and self-doubt. Ambassador Lyra spoke into the stunned silence. This is why we must maintain the Terran Protection Accords. Not because humans are weak, but because they are stronger than we realized. A representative from the Mechanoid Collective raised a metallic appendage. If humans are so dangerous, should we not consider them a threat to galactic peace? Dr. Valinix shook his head firmly. The research shows that humans only exhibit this behavior when protecting others. They cannot activate it deliberately or use it for aggressive purposes. It is purely a defensive response triggered by threats to their pack. Furthermore, added Ambassador Lyra, humans consistently return to peaceful behavior once the threat passes. In both the Krellin incident and the Nexus Station event, the humans provided medical care to their former enemies. Council Prime Dexara stood, her 4 arms raised for attention. The evidence is clear. The Terran Protection Accords exist not just to protect humans, but to prevent the kind of incident that occurred at Nexus Station. The Catherians violated these accords and faced the consequences. General Korth made one final attempt to challenge the decision. Are we to live in fear of a species that transforms when threatened? This seems like a weakness, not a strength. Dr. Valinix smiled, an expression that conveyed both sadness and wisdom. General, consider this. Humans are the only species that becomes more dangerous when protecting others rather than themselves. They sacrifice their own safety for the welfare of their pack. This is not weakness, it is the highest form of courage. The assembly fell silent as the implications sank in. Every species in the galaxy fought hardest when defending themselves. Only humans fought hardest when defending others. It was a fundamental difference that made them unique among all known life forms. The vote is called, announced Council Prime Dexara. All in favor of maintaining and strengthening the Terran Protection Accords? The result was overwhelming. Species after species voted to maintain the special protections for humans. Even General Korth, after studying the data more carefully, changed his vote to support the measure. The Terran Protection Accords are hereby renewed and strengthened, Dexara declared. Any species that deliberately harms humans or triggers their protective response will face immediate council intervention. As the assembly dispersed, representatives from dozens of species approached the human observers who had been watching. From the gallery, Marcus, Sarah, and Tommy had been brought to the council headquarters to witness the proceedings, and they were overwhelmed by the attention. We just did what anyone would do, Marcus protested as alien diplomats praised their actions. We protected our friend. Ambassador Lyra smiled, her leaves rustling with gentle amusement. Captain Chun, that is exactly why your species is protected. You believe that anyone would do what you did, but you are wrong. Only humans possess that particular form of courage. Dr. Valinix approached the group, his ancient eyes filled with respect. Your species has taught the galaxy something important about the nature of strength. True power comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the willingness to protect. Tommy, his nose still bandaged from the Catherian attack, looked around at the gathered aliens with wonder. So we're really protected by galactic law. More than that, replied Council Prime Dexara, who had joined the group. You are respected. The galaxy has learned that humans are not weak creatures in need of protection. You are a species with hidden strength that emerges when others are in danger. Sarah, ever the xenobiologist, was fascinated by the scientific implications. Dr. Valinix, could other species develop similar protective responses? The elderly scientist considered the question carefully. In theory, perhaps. but it would require fundamental changes in brain chemistry and social structure. Humans evolved this ability over millions of years. It is part of what makes you uniquely human. As the humans prepared to return to their ship, Zareth approached them. The ancient Etherian had traveled to the council headquarters specifically to witness the proceedings. "Young humans," she said in her wind chime voice, "you have done more than protect yourselves at Nexus Station. You have reminded the galaxy why cooperation is stronger than domination." Marcus looked back at the Grand Assembly Hall, where representatives from 50 species were still discussing the implications of the human protective response. "We just wanted to help our friend." "And that," Zareth replied, "is why your species will always be protected. In a galaxy full of creatures who fight for themselves, humans fight for each other. That makes you precious beyond measure." The 3 humans boarded their ship, the Persistence, and began the journey back to human space. Behind them, the galaxy was already changing. Species that had dismissed humans as weak were reconsidering their assumptions. The Terran Protection Accords were being studied and strengthened. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, other humans were living their lives, unaware that they carried within them the power to transform when their pack was threatened. The quantum beacon in their ship continued to transmit, sending peaceful signals that identified them as a protected species. But more than that, it announced to the galaxy that humans were not protected because they were weak. They were protected because they were strong in ways that no other species could understand or replicate. And that strength came not from their ability to fight, but from their willingness to sacrifice everything for the ones they loved.